What happens when a war movie looks impressive but completely loses the people who know the job? When explosions get louder but logic quietly leaves the room? Some films are praised for drama, scale, and emotion, yet quietly dismissed by those who actually live the structure, discipline, and limits of real operations. Halfway through this list, you'll notice a pattern, and once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Number 15. Pearl Harbor, 2001. From the very first sequence, Pearl Harbor tells you exactly what kind of movie it wants to be. Not a study of failure, not a lesson in coordination, but a glossy spectacle where history exists only to decorate a love story. Military experts often point out that the real event was defined by missed warnings, delayed decisions, and confusion at every level. The film replaces all of that with clean hero moments and perfect timing. Aircraft move like sports cars in the sky. Command decisions happen instantly. Characters always arrive exactly where they are needed. In reality, the tragedy unfolded slowly through paperwork, misread signals, and hesitation. That part is almost completely ignored here. What frustrates experts most is not the romance. It is the rewriting of cause and effect. The event becomes a sudden ambush instead of a chain of ignored clues. That change removes responsibility and replaces it with destiny. It looks dramatic, but it teaches nothing. Many historians say the film turns a real failure into an emotional shortcut. It asks you to feel something without understanding why it happened. That is why professionals often tune out. It may look big, but it feels hollow. Number 14. Behind Enemy Lines, 2001. This movie plays like a chase game dressed in a uniform. From the moment the pilot goes down, real procedure disappears. Experts often describe the survival scenes as fantasy stitched together with speed and noise. Movement is too fast. Detection is too convenient. Recovery happens like a movie promise, not a structured plan. In real operations, timing is slow and painful. Distance matters. Weather matters. Here, everything bends to keep the story moving. The terrain becomes a playground instead of a threat. The danger feels constant but never specific. Aviation professionals often point out how systems behave in ways they simply do not. Tracking appears and vanishes at the exact moment the script needs it. Decisions that would normally take coordination across multiple layers are handled by one person running through forests. The problem is not excitement. It is consequence. Every choice in this film feels reversible. Nothing costs enough. Experts say that real survival stories are defined by waiting, confusion, and exhaustion. This film replaces that with motion. It is entertaining, but for professionals, it feels weightless. Style replaces structure, and once that happens, trust disappears. Number 13. Enemy at All, The Gates, 2001. At first glance, this looks like a serious historical drama. The setting is real. The battle is real. But experts, especially marksmen and historians, often take issue with how the film turns patience into theater. The famous duel at the center of the story is filmed like a Western showdown. Slow glances, perfect timing, clear lines of sight. In reality, this kind of work is invisible and deeply uncertain. Experts say the film turns a waiting game into a performance. Details are also heavily altered. Characters are combined or invented. Events are rearranged. While films often compress history, this one bends it so far that professionals struggle to recognize the original shape. What bothers experts most is how skill is portrayed. It looks instinctive and dramatic instead of learned and repetitive. The environment becomes a stage instead of an obstacle. The result is a movie that feels intense but artificial. It wants admiration without patience. For those who understand the discipline involved, it feels like history filtered through a spotlight. Visually striking, but emotionally dishonest. Number 12. U-571, 2000. This film has one of the most infamous reputations among naval historians, not because it is poorly made, but because it rewrites responsibility. The central mission is assigned to the wrong group, changing a real achievement into a fictional one. Experts often describe this as one of the most unnecessary alterations in film history. The real story was already dramatic. The change added nothing except confusion. For professionals, that matters deeply. Beyond the history issue, technical behavior is simplified. Underwater tension becomes noise and shaking. Damage responses happen too cleanly. Crews react with movie logic instead of trained instinct. Submarine veterans often say the environment feels wrong. Too spacious, too visible, too dramatic. Real conditions are tighter, quieter, and more oppressive. This film is often cited in lectures as an example of how small changes can damage credibility. It looks authentic on the surface, but once you know the background, the illusion collapses. For experts, accuracy is not decoration. It is the foundation. Number 11. American Sniper. 2014. This film sparked enormous conversation, and experts are careful when discussing it. Respect for real people exists separately from criticism of portrayal. Many professionals point out that the movie simplifies decision-making into clear moments of certainty. In reality, those choices are layered with doubt, delay, and verification. The film compresses that complexity into quick judgment calls. That may work dramatically, but it does not reflect how responsibility actually functions. Experts also note how environments are portrayed as constant danger zones. Real operations involve long stretches of waiting, observation, and uncertainty. Here, tension is almost continuous, which creates a distorted impression. The issue is not intensity, it is framing. The film presents skill as instinct rather than discipline. It turns procedure into personality. Many professionals say the movie feels more like a memory shaped for audience reaction than a record shaped by experience. It is powerful, but selective, and that selectivity is exactly why experts debate it so fiercely. Number 10. Black Hawk Down, 2001. This movie is often praised, but military experts have a complicated relationship with it. On the surface, it feels authentic. The sound is heavy, the movement feels urgent, the confusion feels real. But experts often point out that the film quietly reshapes the event into something cleaner and more heroic than it truly was. Timelines are compressed. Decisions happen faster than reality allows. Coordination problems are simplified. In real life, confusion lasted longer. Mistakes stacked up, and recovery was far messier. The film smooths those edges to maintain momentum. Another common criticism is how opposing forces are portrayed. They appear mostly as noise and motion, not organized resistance. Experts argue this removes context and reduces understanding of why the situation collapsed the way it did. Professionals often say the film feels accurate in texture but selective in meaning. It captures stress well, but not responsibility. It shows action without fully showing consequence. That is why experts respect the craft, but hesitate to praise the message. It feels real, moment to moment, but incomplete as a lesson. And for those who live through complex operations, that distinction matters. Number 9. Lone Survivor. 2013. This film carries emotional weight, but experts often separate emotion from evaluation. The central issue is not respect. It is structure. Military analysts frequently point out that the mission setup contradicts standard observation doctrine. Movement choices are questioned. Visibility assumptions are stretched. Engagement unfolds in ways that feel dramatic rather than deliberate. Experts note that real planning focuses on avoidance, not escalation. The film leans heavily into momentum instead. Another criticism involves how terrain is used. The environment becomes a dramatic obstacle course rather than a factor that shapes every decision. Falls, chases, and escapes stack up quickly, reducing the sense of exhaustion and time. Professionals often say the film turns a tragic event into a legend framework. That approach simplifies uncertainty into inevitability. It creates clarity where real life had none. Many experts emphasize that honoring real people does not require exaggeration. When films smooth over doubt and complexity, they risk replacing understanding with myth. That is why this movie remains debated. Powerful, but not instructional. Number 8. The Hurt Locker, 2008. Few war films are criticized as consistently by active duty professionals as this one. Experts often describe it as a character study that ignores how teams actually function. The lone specialist behavior at the center of the story is viewed as unrealistic. Procedure is repeatedly abandoned. Safety checks vanish. Authority is treated as optional. In real environments, discipline is what keeps people alive. This film treats it as a suggestion. Experts also criticize how tension is portrayed as constant. Real operations involve long stretches of boredom broken by moments of pressure. Here, pressure never stops. That may keep viewers engaged, but it distorts reality. Another issue is how consequences are handled. Repeated rule breaking does not lead to correction. That sends the wrong message about responsibility. Professionals often say the film understands anxiety, but not structure. It feels intense, but disconnected from how teams actually operate. That gap is why experts push back so strongly. Drama replaces discipline, and the result feels hollow to those who know the job. Number 7. Green Zone, 2010. This film wants to be investigative, but experts often say it moves too fast to earn its conclusions. Discoveries happen quickly. Patterns emerge neatly. In reality, information gathering is slow, fragmented, and frustrating. Military analysts note that coordination between units appears smoother than reality. Obstacles vanish conveniently. Decisions feel reactive instead of procedural. The biggest criticism is pacing. The film rushes through complexity to reach confrontation. That shortcut undermines its own message. If confusion is the problem, clarity should not come so easily. Experts also point out that environments feel simplified. Urban spaces behave like chase routes instead of layered risk zones. Professionals often say the movie gestures toward truth but relies on shortcuts. It wants credibility without patience. That makes it engaging but shallow. For experts, accuracy is not just about details. It is about how long things take and how little control anyone truly has. Number 6. Top Gun: Maverick, 2022. Aviation experts admire the flying footage, but they raise eyebrows at the mission itself. The scenario requires perfect timing, perfect conditions, and perfect reactions. Real planning rarely depends on perfection. Threat systems behave conveniently. Detection windows open and close on cue. Fuel concerns fade into the background. Experts often say the mission feels designed to look challenging rather than function realistically. Pilots also point out how quickly training translates into flawless execution. In reality, repetition includes failure. Here, error barely exists. The film succeeds as spectacle, but experts separate spectacle from doctrine. They often describe it as aviation fantasy built on real aircraft. That distinction matters. It inspires, but it does not instruct. Professionals enjoy the visuals while quietly rejecting the setup. It is thrilling, polished, and confident. But confidence alone is not realism. Number 5. Act of Valor, 2012. This film divides experts more than almost any other on this list. On one hand, movement looks right, spacing feels deliberate, timing has weight. Professionals immediately recognize trained motion. On the other hand, the story holding those moments together feels stitched rather than structured. Experts often say the film understands how people move, but not how missions connect. Scenes feel accurate in isolation, then jump forward without enough grounding. Planning phases disappear. Consequences are shortened. Another criticism is how opposing forces behave. Reactions are simplified. Resistance appears exactly when needed, then fades. Real operations involve friction that never resolves cleanly. Here the world seems to cooperate with the camera. Professionals respect the effort but question the framing. Real work is built on repetition and coordination. This film favors highlight moments. Experts often summarize it this way. The film shows how trained people look, but not how systems function. That gap keeps it from being fully trusted. It is impressive but uneven. A rare case where realism appears in motion, not in structure. Number 4. Rambo: First Blood, Part 2, 1985. For decades, this movie shaped public imagination, and for decades, experts have been undoing the damage. The central idea of a single person resolving massive failures alone is one of the most criticized myths in modern war cinema. Professionals point out that recovery missions are team efforts built on planning, coordination, and restraint. This film replaces all of that with speed and spectacle. Logistics vanish. Communication barely exists. Resistance behaves like a training obstacle instead of a thinking force. Experts often say this movie taught audiences the wrong lessons. It turned discipline into bravado. It made patience look weak and improvisation look heroic. That impact lasted far longer than the film itself. Professionals had to explain reality again and again to people who believed this was how things worked. It is entertaining, but experts see it as fantasy wearing serious clothes. Loud, confident, and unforgettable, and completely disconnected from how real operations succeed. Number 3. We Were Soldiers, 2002. This film earns more respect than most on this list, yet experts still raise concerns. The issue is not intent, it is framing. The film focuses tightly on courage and sacrifice, but trims away layers of confusion and delay. Experts note that engagements appear more coordinated than reality allows. Orders land clearly. Responses happen quickly. In real situations, information arrives late or wrong. Another criticism involves balance. The film leans toward clarity, while real encounters are chaotic and uncertain. Professionals say it feels shaped to honor experience, not fully explore it. Still, experts acknowledge what the film does right. Sound carries weight. Fatigue feels real. Leadership is strained. The hesitation comes from what is left out. The film chooses respect over friction. That choice makes it powerful but incomplete. Experts admire it, while quietly noting what it simplifies. Number 2. Jarhead, 2005. Experts often approach Jarhead with caution because it promises realism, then shifts focus in a way that divides professionals. The setting feels authentic. The uniforms, routines, and environment look right. But experts say the film confuses atmosphere with understanding. One of the main criticisms centers on purpose. The mission framework feels loose, and objectives remain unclear for long stretches. Professionals point out that waiting and uncertainty are real parts of deployment, but they exist within structure. Plans exist. Roles matter. In this film, that structure slowly fades. Experts also question how preparation is shown. Training appears more emotional than functional. Discipline feels inconsistent. Real preparation builds habits designed to reduce chaos, not amplify frustration. Here, frustration becomes the central engine of the story. Another issue is how payoff is handled. The film builds tension toward moments that never fully arrive, then treats that absence as the lesson. Experts understand the intent, but argue it overshadows how coordination and responsibility still continue even when action does not. Professionals often summarize it this way. Jarhead captures mood extremely well, but function less so. It studies mindset more than operation. That is why experts debate this film so often. It feels honest in tone, but incomplete in process. And for professionals, process is where realism lives. Number 1. The Hurt Locker, 2008. This is the film professionals criticize most openly. Not quietly, not politely, directly. From the first viewing, experts say it fundamentally misunderstands how teams actually survive under pressure. The story centers on individual impulse, but real success depends on coordination, trust, and shared responsibility. That difference matters more than any visual detail. Repeated rule-breaking is framed as bravery. Authority feels optional. Structure is treated like an obstacle instead of a safeguard. In real environments, that kind of behavior would not be admired. It would be corrected quickly because discipline is not about control, it is about keeping everyone safe. Professionals often say that no team could function if one person constantly ignored process. Experts also reject the idea of non-stop tension. Real work is not a constant rush of danger. It is long stretches of waiting, preparation, and routine, punctuated by moments that demand focus. This film removes that rhythm entirely. Everything is urgent. Everything is extreme. That creates excitement, but it erases reality. The biggest issue experts raise is consequence. Actions rarely lead to correction or accountability. Mistakes do not reshape behavior. That sends the wrong message about responsibility and teamwork. Professionals often explain it this way. The film studies obsession, not operations. It understands stress but ignores discipline. It looks inward instead of outward. So here's the question. If a war movie looks real but teaches the wrong lessons, is it still doing its job? Experts don't hate these films because they are boring. They reject them because reality matters more than spectacle. If you know another film that looks impressive but falls apart under expert eyes, drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more stories where truth matters more than polish.